Hey guys, it's Drew here, quick video blog. I wanted to talk today about assets and liabilities. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because online I see a lot of people that get so upset when they see a person make a post that they're driving a Lambo, or a person posts that they have this high-end car, Mercedes, BMW, whatever it is, right? Ferrari, and people oftentimes say, oh yeah, you look rich, but can you afford that? They say things like that, and or they'll be like, materials are a form of slavery, things like this along these lines. And first of all, I just want to say that most people, I know the difference between assets and liabilities. I own four companies. I co-own a fourth company. I founded and I own three companies. I'm very skilled at operations management. I'm 36 years old. I'm a millionaire. I became a millionaire at 34. I've been running my companies now for a long time. I built them ground up. I'm pretty seasoned. I'm not new to this. I've been an entrepreneur for as long as I can remember, and I started from scratch, and here I am today. Okay, I've been living this lifestyle for a long time. This is not something that is new to me. This is not something that I just woke up in. I didn't get lucky. It's not overnight success. I built this ground up with help from God. So let me just say that. Okay. Now, just to get back to the topic, a lot of people say, a car is not an asset, it's a liability. Stop flexing with liabilities. And they say things like that, and they get upset that they see somebody in a Lambo and they assume the person is broke because, oh, the person's trying to flex and trying to just show that they can afford things, but they're showing off liabilities, they're not showing off assets. People say this stuff all the time. And most of the time, the people who say this stuff are people who don't own assets. It's people who can't afford this stuff. They get mad. They get so upset. When I see I can afford a Lambo. So when I see a Lambo on the road, I'm like, damn, that car looks nice. Like, damn, can't wait to add that to the collection one day. As of current day, I have an M8 Grand Coupe that's over 100K. I have an i8 Roadster that's over 100K. So I know what it's like to buy expensive cars. Now, I know that a Lambo is another level of expense, but I can afford a Lambo, so I'm speaking on this topic. All right. So a lot of times when you go and you buy an expensive item like a car or whatnot, I just know from my experience from buying cars in New York and from buying cars in New Jersey, and also from buying my house, which is over $1 million. When you go and when you go buy expensive items, even if you're paying cash for these items, or if you're leasing, if you're financing or paying cash, people verify the source of funds. You can't just dump cash on people and then like, okay, here. That's not how it works. People verify the source of funds. They verify through looking at your bank statements. They verify through looking at your tax returns. They verify through looking at your corporation. Sometimes they verify by looking at the deed on your house. They verify you because they don't want to get caught up. And I'll explain that. Sometimes when criminals want to legitimize themselves, they do so by either buying a home, buying a business, buying a car, and using those things to be able to legitimize themselves, make themselves look like they're legal or they're engaging in legal activity. So places like, I remember this when I was a stockbroker. I had Series 7, Series 63. In order for us to verify customers making investments, we had to get their social security number under the Patriot Act. We had to get all sorts of information about their suitability for them to just buy an investment. And sometimes the investment is not even up to 100 grand. So when you go into establishments and you want to buy an expensive home, or when you want to buy an expensive car, they give you the same verification. They may not ask for your social security number, but they're going to want you to be able to establish yourself as an individual who can afford these items. So what that means is that most people who are driving cars, like most people who own cars, sorry, not driving, most people who own cars that are over 100,000 can afford them. Because think about it. An establishment like a bank, or an establishment like a car dealership, or an establishment, or any establishment that's verifying these people, don't want these people to go and get an item that they can't afford, because it exposes them to liability and exposes them to a lot of trouble if they took in a client that got their money through illegal means and purchased an item. It exposes them to investigation. It exposes them to liability. So they don't do that. for the most part. Now, there's some people out there who believe that there's people out there who believe that you can be worth $50,000 and you can afford a Lambo and you could just go flex with a Lambo. That's not true. Most people who own Lambos are millionaires, or at least close to it or something. But most of them, I would say, are millionaires. You don't see anybody who's worth 50 grand driving around with a Lambo unless they're renting it and they don't own it and they didn't purchase it. So just saying that. Also, most of these people who like detract from people who have made it are people who are jealous. So imagine you, let's just say you're a humble guy, you own a Honda, you own a Subaru or whatever, you work a normal job or whatnot. Let's say you get off your shift, right? That's like the bum who lives on the street coming up to you and saying to you, can you afford that car that you're in? Can you afford that? Like, can you afford that Acura that you're in? What would you say to that person? You would say, look, here's $1, leave me alone. That's what you'd probably say. Or maybe you give the bum some money and you tell them scram, because how dare they question you about your financial status when they're living on the street? Okay. It's kind of similar when you question a millionaire about their possessions and whether they can afford it or not, and you're not even a millionaire and you're in the rat race. You're working in a cubicle, you're living paycheck to paycheck, you budget your groceries, but you're on the internet questioning people who drive Lamborghinis, on whether they can afford it. That you look silly. You look silly. You look absolutely ridiculous when you do that kind of stuff. You look like a hater, and it's not necessarily like this hasn't happened to me because I don't own a Lambo. I can afford a Lambo, but I don't own one. But I see it all the time. Like these meme pages post, oh, rich. They'll post like rich, and they'll have like a guy in a modest house and a modest car, and they'll be like, he's rich. And then they'll post a guy with a Lambo. They'll be like, this guy's broke because he's got a Lambo. He's trying to look rich. That's not necessarily true. And then people will be like, oh, Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is the exception to the rule. Most people who have money have things that show that they have money. Even old money, even like you want to talk about old money, talk about the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers. They may not be in flashy cars and things like that, but they certainly have estates. Have you ever seen Waddison Manor for the Rothschilds? Have you ever seen the estates of the Rockefellers? These things are behemoths, and they don't only own one of them. They own like multiple. They own like 9 or 10 of them. Okay? Like people often quote Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg is a billionaire that has I think his house is like worth 6 or 7 million. You know what I mean? Like they look for the quietest rich person that they know, and they be like, okay, this is a rich person, because it makes them feel comfortable, because it makes them say like, if I'm caught driving a broke down Toyota Corolla, I can still tell people I'm successful, because after all, I know a person who has a broke down Toyota Corolla. After all, Warren Buffett drives the same car that he's had since 1980 something. So after all, maybe I'm, like, no, we get it. We understand. Like, you feel insecure about your position in life, but that doesn't mean you got to tear down people who are successful. Learn from people who are successful. I'm not saying you should go out and splurge everything, but if you're going to make money and you want to be successful, the whole point of making money is to have more options, not less. I'm not saying you need to blow every single dollar that comes in, but all I'm saying is that, look, like, don't be the guy who looks at somebody in a Lambo and gets jealous and says, I bet you that person can't afford it. Be the person who's in the Lambo that people are talking about. Be the person who's actually being talked about instead of the person who's gossiping. Don't be the hater. Don't be the hater, because at the end of the day, it's not going to get you anywhere. It's not. And let me let you in also on a little secret. Most people who become rich don't become rich through penny pinching and saving every little last dime that they have and budgeting here and budgeting there. They don't get rich that way. People become wealthy by taking calculated risks on businesses and investing. That's how people become wealthy. It's not by penny pinching and by saving, because your penny pinching and your saving is not going to beat inflation anyway. It's not. You're not going to outpace inflation, and it's never going to be fast enough, by the way. It's not even going to outpace your taxes. So every little penny that you save, it's really not going further. You need to think bigger. Think bigger. Think about When you want to think about wealth, don't think about how much can I save. Think about what kind of system, what kind of value do I need to provide in order to make that kind of money? What kind of problem do I need to solve? That's what you need to be thinking. Don't be thinking about, oh, where can I save money? Where That's the wrong way to think. That you're not thinking from a place of abundance, and you're not thinking from a place of providing value. You're thinking from a place of just, hoarding and saving. And saving does have some value to it. I'm not saying to completely discard it, but I'm saying that's not how you become rich. You don't become rich just by saving money. You become wealthy by solving problems, providing value, and investing smartly and intelligently. That's how you become rich. And if you do those things, you can afford plenty of liabilities. You can afford plenty of expenses. There's people who look at, people who travel and people who go places and people who do things and they're like, oh, they're spending all their money. No, they're not actually. They're not. They're probably, with their traveling and with their expenses, they're probably still saving more than you, than you after taxes. After they pay all their taxes, they probably still have more saved than you have, despite your penny pinching. There's levels to this stuff, and if you're not actually doing it, you won't understand it. If you won't understand it if you're not actually doing it. It may be comforting to look at the guy who owns the mansion and who owns the luxury cars and think that he's struggling, but he's not. Most likely he's not. Most likely you're the one who's struggling and you're projecting your struggles onto that person because you're insecure about your position in life. Don't be that way, especially if you're a man. If you're a woman, you get a pass because women gossip. That's a female thing. But if you're a man, don't be like that guy. Don't be like that. Don't be the hater. Don't be the hater. Be the person in the arena who's actually doing the hustling, who's actually doing the grinding, who's actually doing the building of businesses, who's actually doing the problem solving. Be that guy. Don't be the person on the sidelines. It's like, oh, I bet you that's fake. Oh, I bet you they can't afford that. Oh, I bet you they're gonna, I bet you the housing market's gonna crash and that person's gonna lose their mansion or they're gonna lose this or, don't be like that. Don't be a hater because all you're doing is blocking your own blessings. All you're doing is limiting yourself. And by the way, you can't become wealthy or successful if internally you hate people who are. Because what do you want to become? You want to become something that you hate? I don't think so. Don't hate people who are successful. Don't hate people who are doing good. You don't know what problems they're solving and you don't know what path they took to get there. So don't hate. If anything, congratulate. If you find out later that the person that you're congratulating is a scumbag, then you can retract it. No harm done, no blessings blocked, nothing lost. That's it. That's all I'm saying. Stop hating, congratulate, move forward, build and grow and peace. And that's all I got to say.